Okay, so we're in halacha parak aleph halacha gimel. The atzmo shel Yom Kippurim. Rambam continues. Atzmo shel Yom Kippurim. Atzmo shel Yom Kippurim. Mechaper l'shavim is mechaper for people who are shav. Shenemar ki b'yom hazeh yechaper aleichem. On this day, it is a kapara for you. Now the Rambam here says actually in this line a couple of things which actually need to be understood. People understand it to mean mistakenly that it only works for people who do tshuva. But the Rambam is trying to say exactly the opposite. Because the Rambam says the Atzmo Shel Yom Kippurim accomplishes something. The day itself accomplishes something. Now, if you look at the halacha as a whole, it doesn't make any sense. Because he says there's no Beis HaMikdash, there's no Mizbeach Kapara, and therefore you're only left with tshuva. You're only left with tshuva. What the Rambam forgot about Yom Kippur? You follow? He says the only thing you're left with is tshuva. And then he says, your Atzmo Shel Yom Kippurim is mechaper. So what is it that, if you're saying the only thing I've left is tshuva, and then Atzmo Shel you forgot about Yom Kippur? So there's obviously talking about two different things, which is the first definition of what Yom Kippur does. Furthermore, the Rambam learns, there's two ways of learning this pasuk. The Rambam learns this pasuk of Ki b'yom hazeh yechaper aleichem. There's two ways of learning it. One is that this is the day you'll achieve kapara, because, and the Rambam mentioned this in earlier halachas, what we read about it on Yom Kippur is there's an entire avoda which is under that day in order to achieve kapara. The Kohen Gadol, Beis HaMikdash, you guys must have heard of this stuff, right? So that's what the pashtus of the pasuk is. The Rambam is learning the pasuk that Ki b'yom hazeh yechaper aleichem means that this day itself achieves a kapara. So the question would be, is what type of kapara does it achieve? Okay? That's the first time the Rambam mentions Yom Kippur. He mentions it again in Halacha Dalet in a different way, which is not so nogea us, right? If you actually, let's see the first line of Halacha Dalet. Halacha Dalet begins with Av al pisha tshuva mechaperes al hakol, which leads us back to our question from the previous halacha. Even though tshuva is mechaper on everything, the Atzmo Shel Yom Kippurim mechaper and the Atzmo Shel Yom Kippurim is mechaper. He gets on to say there are certain averos that require other things. But the point is, he just said tshuva is mechaperes al hakol. Then what is he adding by the Atzmo Shel Yom Kippurim? We're done with the tshuva. And if tshuva only works for shavim, if Yom Kippur only works for shavim, if you did tshuva, what do you need Yom Kippur for? How's it supposed to work? What's Yom Kippur at? Okay, that's it. B. Go to the second paragraph of Hilchos Teshuva. He says like this in the second paragraph of Hilchos Teshuva. He says as follows in Halacha Zayin. We're going to skip to Halacha Zayin. It says like this. Yom Kippurim Uzman Tshuva L'Kol. The Yom Kippur is a day of tshuva for all. L'Yochid v'Rabim, for the Yochid and for the Rabim. Who kates mechila v'slicha l'Yisrael. And this is an ultimate. It's a climax of slicha and mechila. For mechila and slicha in Yisrael. Lefikach, and therefore chayav makol lasos tshuva v'lisvagas b'Yom Kippurim. Therefore, everybody is chayav to do tshuva and to be misvada on Yom Kippur. U'mitzvahs vida Yom Kippurim, the mitzvah vida of Yom Kippurim, sheyaschom mi'erev hayom kodem sheyochal, you have to start it before Yom Kippur, before you eat, shema yechanik b'suda kodem mishiyasvada. In case you choke in the suda before you do vidu. Now, let's just stop for 1 second. Everybody's familiar with this halacha because this is why we say vidu at mincha on erev Yom Kippur before the suda mafsek. But it doesn't make any sense. Because what the Rambam is saying is there's a mitzvah of vidi of Yom Kippur, or that Yom Kippur is a case of mechila v'slicha, and therefore a person is chayav to do tshuva and say vidi of Yom Kippur. Then how does it help you to say vidi of Yom Kippur before Yom Kippur? Why isn't it the equivalent of saying on Shabbos there's a mitzvah of zechira, where you say the mitzvah of zechira of Shabbos by saying kiddush Friday night? You may choke before, you may get hit by a car on the way home from shul. Therefore, make sure you say Kiddush before you go to shul Friday night, so you shouldn't miss the mitzvah of Kiddush. It's not Shabbos yet. So when he came to the Kiddush of Shabbos before Shabbos, how do you do the video of Yom Kippur before Yom Kippur? And by the way, we're not going to get into it here. There's a machlokes Rishonim how to learn this particular Gemara, which mentions the video of Yom Kippur being done on Yom Kippur. This is where the Rambam is learning it. So that the mitzvah of the video of Erev Yom Kippur is the mitzvah of the vidui of Yom Kippur begins on Erev Yom Kippur. So how does that work? It must tell you something about what Yom Kippur is too. And even though you said vidui before you ate, choser misvada below Yom Kippurim, which makes sense, because even though you said vidui beforehand, well, it wasn't Yom Kippur yet, you didn't choke, you should say vidui again. It's weird the way the Rambam puts it. Even though you did it before you ate, right? oh, you should do it again at the night of Yom Kippur, on Yom Kippur. Right? And Arvis, the Chozim Mitzvah of Shabbos, they did it again on Shabbos, Umusaf and Mincha and Ne'il. Now, Heichon Mitzvah there, what is this vidui? So where does a Yachid say vidui? After Shemona Esrei, which is where we say it. You may think it's the middle of Shemona Esrei. It's not actually, because you are saying it after you have finished all of Shemona Esrei. It's just you haven't finished Shemona Esrei. You finish Sim Shalom, you said Baruch Yisrael B'Shalom, and then you start this. So it really is after Shemona Esrei, right? But when we do it in Chazar Sashat, so then it's in the middle of the tefillah for bracha reviews. Now we're going to get to, you know what? Let's do one more halacha. Halacha Ches. Havidu shenogu bo Yisrael. The vidu that all of Yisrael is knowing to say on Yom Kippur. Aval anachnu chatan. But we have sinned. Bu ikar avidu. That is the ikar avidu. You may notice. You may not have. I'm going to tell you. You will notice if you didn't notice it until now. Is that before you do Hashamnu Bagadnu every day in Slichos, and before you do Hashamnu Bagadnu in Vidu on Yom Kippur, you say, and you finish with the words, and then you say Hashamnu Bagadnu. The Rambam is saying those words, is the Ikar Vidu. Everything after that is extra credit. That the Ikar Vidu of all Klal Yisrael is Avalanafu Chatan. That's the Ikar Vidu. Okay? Now, great. And then the Rambam gets into that Averis that you did Vidu on this Yom Kippur, you have to do on the next Yom Kippur, etc. Now, what are these two halachas about? What are these two halachas? What's going on with it? So let's go back to the first parak and understand something. Because our big question over here is what is Yom Kippur trying to accomplish, and what does the Rambam mean that it's Mechaper L'Shavim, and what does it mean that he says that the only thing left is tshuva, and then you have Yom Kippur as Mechaper L'Shavim. So here you need to learn a little bit more about the ikar halachas of what tshuva is, because the mistake that everybody has, but I'm saying unfortunately you certainly have, or maybe you have given up on the mistake but haven't yet figured out what it is that tshuva still is an icon that begins with a T, and that it sounds like something to do with repentance, which you don't know really what that means, but it's something to do with feeling bad. The Rambam doesn't say that. The Rambam says like this. Let's go over to the very beginning of Hilchos Teshuva. The Rambam says like this. Kol mitzvah shebetorah, bein aseh bein lo aseh. All the mitzvahs in the Torah, whether they are a positive commandment or whether they are a negative commandment, or in other words, a lav, im avar adam alachas mehem. If a person transgresses one of them, bein bezodon bein bishkago, whether it's on purpose or by accident, kishiyasa tshuva, when he does tshuva, there's some sort of act of making tshuva, which we spoke about a little bit in Rosh Yeshiva. We'll speak about a little bit again here, but if guys want to know more about it, maybe we'll discuss it next month. V'yashuv michato, and he achieves a level where now he wants to be shoved from his chay. He's chayav li'isvadus divnei akel baruch. He's chayav to say vid, right? And he brings the pasuk v'isvaduas chatasam asher asu, and that refers to vidu dvar. Okay, and vidu is a mitzvah saseh. And the Rambam says here, how do you say vidu? Very different than the vidu we had, aval anachnu chatan, which the Rambam said is the ikar vidu on Yom Kippur. It says a very, very specific vidu. And I need to say the following. Chatasi avisi pashati lofanecha. I was chote, I was ma'aves, I was in an oven, I was poshea before you. Va'asisi kach v'kach. And I did the following. I have to specify what I did. V'hari nichanti, I regret it, uboshti, and I'm embarrassed with my act. I'm never going to go back to this. And guess what the Rambam says here? This is the ikra of vidu. The exact same words he said in the second parak on Avalanachu Chatan is the ikra. So which one is it? What's he trying to say? Okay? And then he gets into the fact that if you're marba and vidu, it's good, etc. And then he says as follows, that kol bali chatos v'ashamos, someone who's bringing a korban chatos, v'muchal Shabbos chas v'shalom v'shogeg, you bring a korban chatos, ve'esh mevin korban asein al shkigosan al zdonan, at the time that they're bringing their korban, at the exact time, right? Ein mischaper lahen korbanom ad shiyasu tshuva. It will not be mechaper for them their korban until they do tshuva. Okay, now here are the points I want to bring up. Listen to what he just said, because this is going to be, I'm obviously giving you like 20 shurim here on one particular point. So don't expect to understand every product. But understand what the Rambam just said. First is Machal Shabbos. Why do you bring a Korban Chatas for Machal Shabbos? Somebody out there tell me, why do you bring a Korban Chatas for Machal Shabbos? Huh? Good, but why do you bring it? Why do you bring it? God said bring it. That's what Torah says. Torah says bring your Machal Shabbos, you bring a Chatas. Now you get to Jesse. Why does the Torah tell you to bring the Chatas? Because it's a kapara. Okay? Now, let's say, I'm assuming you learned Daf Yomi, you may know this, you may not, right? Let's say I bring the Chatas, and it's Betzal Bek's Chatas. I'm not saying anything about your behavior, right? But I'm the Kohen, and when I bring the Chatas, I say, oh, this isn't Betzal Bek's Chatas. I have in mind that this is Jesse's Chatas, right? Korban's puzzle. Betzal doesn't achieve kapara. Bring another one. He can sue me for the money. It's a discussion actually whether the Kohen has to pay back. Actually is, not a check, right? But the cow is an expensive thing, right? But it doesn't work. Now, the Rambam says, if Betzalel, when he gives me this chatzas to bring, at the time that I'm bringing it, says vidui, so then, right, in mischaper lehem b'korban ad shiyasu tshuva v'yisvad, that this korban will not be mechaper for Betzalel until he has done tshuva and said vidui. I'm following. Torah told me I bring a chatas. Does that mean if he doesn't do tshuva and say vidui, the korban's puzzle the same way I brought Betzalel Bek's korban chatas in Jesse's name? Was he have to bring another one? No, you can't bring another one actually, because the korban is done. The korban's done, and it actually achieves a kapar. Well, what's the Rambam talking about then? How does Rabbi Katz say that? How does he say that? Because if you pay attention to what he says, it says, in mischaper lahen bekorbanon ad shiyasu tshuva, meaning that when he brings the korban chatas and he doesn't do tshuva or say vidui, it's not mischaper for him. Okay, well, what's it mischaper for then? That's why I corrected Jesse before when I asked him, why do you bring a korban chatas? The answer was, because the Torah says you bring korban chatas. In other words, the Rambam understands, and the Torah understands, the Rambam's explaining it, that there's something called kapara, which exists on several levels. Meaning, there's something that happens when you do an Achil Shabbos, which requires a korban chatas. That's just the way it is. And that achieves something in some objective reality, which is not for the moment to be explained, but when you've been Mechal Shabbos, you have broken something that needs to be fixed. How do you fix it? You bring a korban chatas, and that's a chiyuv. One chil Shabbos b'shaveh equals one korban chatas, and that's the halacha. And that has to happen. But you know something? There's two different things that happen when someone is Machal Shabbos. One is they're a Machal Shabbos, and by the way, just so you can see the riot and really understand this, I didn't bring this out well. If you look back at the very introduction to Hilchos Teshuva, right? Most people, at the very first words we brought down, most people think that tshuva should be a mitzvah, right? In other words, I should have a mitzvah to do tshuva. The Rambam says that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Why would you have a mitzvah to do tshuva? You had a mitzvah that you broke. So I'm going to give you a mitzvah to fix the thing you broke. No. The Rambam says, what does tshuva come from? Kol mitzvah sheb'Torah. The subject is kol mitzvah sheb'Torah. I told you to keep Shabbos. You broke it, you still have to keep Shabbos. Oh, so you know you can keep Shabbos if you've broken it by bringing a chatas. Now, in other words, A is made to fix up. There's no separate mitzvah of tshuva. The original chiyuv to not be over the lav or to do the aseh is the same thing that's being mechayev you the tshuva. It can't be something separate. Okay, so on the level of fixing what you broke, you brought the chatas. The Rambam is saying there's another level that it can help out. It can also be mechaper you. You can use this to be mechaper you. You don't have to. You're a fool not to. But you know how you can use it? Oh, tshuva and vidui. Now, why am I bringing this out? And this is a much larger. We could spend 2 shiurim just on halacha aleph here. What we're going to do, because what I'm trying to point out to you is that kapara works in levels. And let me explain why that makes sense. Kapara comes from the word to clean off. So mechaper means that I'm correcting something. I'm fixing something. I'm actually fixing something. You break a window, right? You can say you're sorry, and we'll get to that later, but it doesn't fix my window, right? It doesn't fix it. You got to fix the window. You're Machal Shabbos. You can say you're sorry to God, but it doesn't fix the Shabbos. You can fix it. How you can bring a chatzos. Now, there's other things that happen. Because not only did you fix the window, but you're the guy that broke it. Not only did you fix the Chol Shabbos, but you're the guy who's Machal Shabbos. Oh, you can hop around while I'm bringing this korban to fix Shabbos, that I, who was the one who caused the disaster of being Machal Shabbos, right? I caused that disaster. Oh, I can get cleaned off from being the guy that caused it by having done Tshuva and Vidri at the time of the korban. Everybody follow this? How things happen in levels? So that when somebody does something, and this is true in human relationships, which are obviously a reflection of relationships with Kodesh Baruch Hu, things occur on many, 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 many levels. There's an absolute level. There's the level of my involvement in it, right? There's the level of the relationship I have with it. And the Rambam goes through a number of cases so that somebody who damages his friend, and he gets to someone who damages his friend, so there's what has to happen. If I damage my friend, if I break my friend's car window, what's going to be the first level of kapara without even looking at the Rambam? Now that you know this, what's the first level of kapara? No, not saying I'm sorry, because saying I'm sorry accomplishes nothing. Fixing the window does, right? So the first level is, if you look at the bottom, if you look at the last line, it's at the end of Halach Aleph, you have a different nusach, you have a different printed item. The first thing is you pay him, right? The same way you brought the korban on the Shabbos, the first thing is you got to pay him. After you pay him, then there's other things that have to happen. Okay? So the Rambam is very consistent. Now, once I know that's true, it means this entire parak is addressing one idea. And that idea is kapara. And it's addressing levels of kapara. So I start with the kol mitzvah shabbatar, I start with the korbanos, I start with the tshuva and vidui. Halacha base, he gets the seir l'mishtalech. In other words, there is some level, remember, on Yom Kippur, the avoda is, we take a seir mishtalech, we toss it, right? The Kohen Gadol does a vidui on the seir mishtalech, and one gets shafted and the blood is sprinkled, one gets thrown off, seir mishtalech goes out to la'azazel. Great, how's the Kohen Gadol saying a vidui for me? Right? We just have a halacha. If I do a vera, I have to say vidui. How can he say, because he's not being mechaper on me on the level that my vidui does. There's some level of kapara of kol Yisrael. In other words, it's not just that there was a Chol Shabbos. It's not just that I was Machal Shabbos. It's that I now was Machal Shabbos, which ruined things for the entire Jewish people. Oh, that's a different level. It needs to be taken care of. Etc. In other words, everything occurs multi-levels, needs to be dealt with. So when the Rambam gets to halacha Gimel, which was the halacha we started with, he says, look, now we're really screwed. There's no Beis Hamikdash, there's no Mizbeach Kapara. You can't fix the broken window, right? You can't. You made a hole in the ozone or whatever it is. You broke a window by being Machal Shabbos. No Beis Hamikdash. There is no Mizbeach Kapara. You got nothing left. You know the only level of Kapara that exists? Tshuva. Now, Tshuva does accomplish. He doesn't explain to you what Tshuva is. He doesn't get into that. He says it's mechaperes al kol ha'averos. So, without not a deep explanation, on some level, the transgressions you have done, it overcomes. That's what it does. There's a big difference between being mechaper on a chait, which is like a meta level where I'm fixing up the destruction of reality, to the having cleaned off the transgressions I did. But then he gets to our story, which is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippurim is the day itself is mechaper on you. So that if I've done tshuva, there's still obviously another level which Yom Kippur addresses. Now, in the Chumash, when you read the Chumash and you read the invention of Yom Kippur, we're told about this entire new level. Well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing to shochei tamatov tu masam. He's willing to dwell with us in our filth. So what it essentially means is that even if I've done tshuva, whatever that means, whatever it is I've done tshuva, there's a level of filth which only gets cleaned off with Yom Kippur. And the day of Yom Kippur itself does it. Now, what's that mean to us on a nafkamin level? It means, before we get into the next level, which is the more direct level which we deal with Yom Kippur, which is what he does in the second paragraph, is that on the day itself, the experiencing the day itself, it itself allows for a level of kapara, a cleansing, which we would not have. We talked about in Rosh Yeshiva, that what the Moedim do, they do almost passively to you. In other words, the more connected you are, the more you can gain from having, or Sheftel's word, what's he called, to reset, or to he's got a big word for it, to recalibrate by having connected to that particular yontif. but they happen as in a passive way too. Yom Kippur happens completely passive. A person can fast on Yom Kippur and sleep an entire day in his bed, and l'maisa b'yom hazeh chaper aleichem. It will be mechaper. If you were shoved, so that the only thing left is to go, right? The chaper l'shavim. You've been shoved, right? So that you've now gotten rid of as much filth of that avera as you possibly can. There's no other way. You can't reach this level because nobody's a migdash, but you've gotten rid. Yom Kippur will finish that off. It will somehow finish that off. It allows for a level of kapara. Okay? Now, get to the second parak, and we talk about something completely different. When we talk about in the second parak, the Rambam starts with, it's Izmai Tshuva called, Mechila B'Slicha L'Yisrael. It is the climax of forgiveness. Now, kapara and forgiveness are two different things, right? Jesse right away pointed out he thought that if I broke your window, what's the first thing I have to do? What did you say? You said, it's apologize. It doesn't fix my window, right? But what does it do? What does it do? To fix the relationship. So when we address the second parak, we learn about a whole different idea. Kapara means to clean off. And that's why korbanos achieve kapara. The Beis Hamikdash achieves kapara. The Mizbeach achieves kapara. The Sirla Azazel achieves kapara. Yom Kippur can achieve kapara. But what is it on this level? It's Tzlicha u'Mechila. Now, I very often am in a situation where I ask for forgiveness in terms of wanting to repair a relationship where I haven't actually repaired the thing itself. And that Yom Kippur comes to address and makes it much more easily to relate to, because in the first parak we saw that part of your vidui dvarim, and we're not really discussing how that vidui dvarim works, but part of your vidui dvarim was that I say I'm never going to do this thing again, right? That's a big deal. How many people can honestly on Yom Kippur, when they're saying Al Chetach say I'm never going to do this thing again? It's true, some of them you've never done it, and Mir Hashem you never will do. But the ones that Lashon Hara, I'm going to say, did somebody getting wet? Did the sprinklers turn on out there or something? No? Okay. I think it goes on later. I think it goes on 10 o'clock. Anyway, but you can't say that you can't say I'm never going to do this thing again. On Yom Kippur, you don't have to. It's a case, Slicha u'Mechila. Now, don't worry about that. That's just the bushes. That's just the dry. That's what that sound is. Don't worry. As soon as the water starts going through it, there you go. Okay. Anyway, right? So that's what he says. The case, Mechila v'Slicha, and therefore a person does tshuva and is misvada. But look at what the vidui is that I say in Yom Kippur. Do I say I did the following, I'm never going to do it again? All I say is aval anachnu chatanu. Now, this is a very practical idea. By the way, stop me for 2 seconds. On the first tefillah you say while you're waiting for Kol Nidre or after Kol Nidre, if you're unfortunately related to Shul, is something called tefillah zakah. Anybody who knows doesn't know. If you don't know what tefillah zakah is, you should find out. If you do know what tefillah zakah is, the most important part of tefillah zakah is at the very end of it, you say that I mochel anybody who did anything to me. Right? The mechila part is the most important part. And everybody's aware of this idea. Anybody who's been in yeshivas knows you walk around and you're asking, mochel me, mochel me, mochel me. Right? That is the Yom Kippur idea. When people ask me on Rosh Yeshiva, they're making a tremendous mistake. Because Rosh Yeshiva is not about that, as we discovered last week already. Yom Kippur, the idea is how can I go and achieve a sleep with you? I want to repair a relationship with Kadosh Baruch Hu if I'm not interested in repairing the relationships with the other people who I may have hurt, right? And therefore, it's not only incumbent upon me to ask for mechila, it's incumbent upon me to grant mechila, because the ability to want to repair the relationships is the same way I want Kadosh Baruch Hu to treat it. The same way I want to repair the relationship by granting mechila, I have the right to ask Kadosh Baruch Hu to grant me mechila and repair our relationship. And therefore, the Rambam says is what is the vidui? The vidui which a person says is aval anachnu chatanu. Aval anachnu chatanu means, but I've sinned. So what would possibly be the value in that? Now that you understand what tzlicha mechila is, think, what would be the value of saying, but I've sinned? Not saying I'm never going to do it again, but I've sinned. Yeah. The first step is somebody asking for mechila. You've been through this 100 times in your life, if not 1,000 times. If you've lived in a dorm yeshiva, 10,000 times, right? So is the fact that a guy comes up and you say, you don't even realize what you did was wrong. You don't even think about it. It didn't mean anything to you. You took my soda, you took my deodorant, you used my bar of soap, whatever it was. Can't use everybody's bar of soap nowadays, right? But you don't even think it's wrong. Well, what's the big deal? No, that's the point. You can't achieve slicha mechila until you realize aval anachnu chatan. And this is extremely important. In other words, When we come and say vidui over and over and over and over again in Yom Kippur, it's not a vidui where we know we're going to achieve kapara. Is it possible on Yom Kippur to say vidui we achieve kapara? Yes, it is possible. But getting to a point where you can actually do tshuva is a massive avoda, which is why, if you remember those first words at the very beginning of the Rambam, which I pointed out, we'll discuss another time, there is an entire process of a siyas tshuva, which brings you to be shoved from chatayim. It's an entire process of creating tshuva that brings you to a place where now I can actually be shoved. And the Rambam explains that actually being shoved is the second halach of the second parak, also not for now. When it comes to Yom Kippur, what's supposed to happen is it's a ketz mechila b'slicha. It's the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there waiting just to repair the relationship. That's what he wants to accomplish. But the first thing you got to be able to do is say, you know something? I'm insane. I'm insane. What's a hate mean? A hate means you're off target. How does that work? Because there's an objective reality that we are very much aware of, or I shouldn't say we're very much aware of, but we strive to continually be more and more aware of. You call it MS, you call it Torah, you have all the different words you use for it, right? Our ability to connect to it is ruined by our playing God and us taking our subjective way of seeing things, right? Nobody sins. If God could write a Torah for me, this would have been mutter. He'd understand, right? Nobody sins, and that's the point. I've never sinned in my life. Everything I did, he would have understood. On Yom Kippur, I say, you know something? I sinned. I sinned. And that's all that's required. You want slichul mechila? Just avaleachu chatani. That's all that has to happen. Admit and understand that you're insane. No, I understand I'm going back to that same insanity. At 7 or whatever it is, like at 6:56, the time is out. At 6:57, you'll be back right at that insanity. At 6:56 and a half, you'll be saying Kriya Shema without being mechaber in the very first paragraph of Shema. Right? I understand. That's what's going to happen. But what is it that I want to achieve? I would love to live like a Yom Kippur. I mean, I wouldn't love to live like a Yom Kippur, but the idea of a Yom Kippur is what I would like to live. And that's what Yom Kippur is about. So Yom Kippur is not a reality. That's why we don't eat, we don't drink, we don't wash. We're removing ourselves from the entire world so that on this day, in being removed from my reality, I can connect possibly to a reality outside of myself and possibly achieve slichul mechila. That's not fixing things, but I'm fixing a relationship. I'm asking for forgiveness. I'm getting granted mechila b'slicha, and this ends up being the entire key. What's it mean a ketz mechila b'slicha? It's a climax. The Rambam talks about in the halacha before on the idea of a seres yemei tshuva, and he says that there's this idea of tshuva v'tza'aka, the idea of screaming out and begging for forgiveness. Right? He says the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are the best time to do it. Dirshu Hashem b'yimatzo. Hashem is there, available during that time. So now it comes Erev Yom Kippur, and now you can finally fix up that relationship. You have that opportunity. I'm not going to say I might not get a chance to do it. Oh, so even Erev Yom Kippur, I'll start saying Vidui. Even Erev Yom Kippur, I'll try. It's true, it's not Yom Kippur yet, but it doesn't make sense for me to wait. I may miss that opportunity. So I do it, and then I do it again at Marv, and then I do it again at Shabbos, and then I do it again at Mincha, and then I do it again at Neil, because it's the one opportunity I have to say, I need to repair this relationship in order that I can go forward with life. And that's what Yom Kippur ends up being about. So Yom Kippur, remember, the Yom Kippur is we spoke a number of times about it's from the 2 happiest days of the year, because it's the achievement of Mechila V'Slicha. Remember that it's a Kadosh Baruch Hu willing to live in a world which does not actually work. Right? It was after the building of the Egel, we broke the Luchos, and we're put into a world which is our world, which is one of, we spoke about before in terms of Rosh Yeshiva, it's a world of I forgot the word I used, but it was a good word, the idea of a life of going someplace where things are happening, where I'm never getting status, but rather I'm trying to achieve. So Yom Kippur comes along and says, I'm willing to step outside the world. And this is an important thing. In other words, one of the things that happens in Yom Kippur because of the things we don't do is we go from what we call a life of achievement to a life of just being. That's part of the idea of Yom Kippur. It's just a day to be. Right? That's all you do is you just be. That allows an openness enough to a relationship where Slicha and Mechila can possibly be achieved. But the doing that needs to be done in Yom Kippur is the realization what I'm not, or maybe the realization of what I am. So all the vidurs, right? What do we do? The vidur, everybody, what bothers you about the vidur when you're saying this? It's very general. Shamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu. Okay, then you get into all the al-chaitz. The al-chaitz, they try to be more specific. They're still very, very not specific. All right? Al-chaitz shchatanu v'idas nus. I mean, you start thinking of examples of it, or and it goes through, but they're very general. But the point is, it's meant to be very general, right? That these people who say vidu with set 10,000, there's all sorts of lists they give on you. They're unnecessary. In fact, when we get to Ne'ilah, we say a shorter vidu. We don't say an extra vidu. We don't do the al-chaitz and the chazar shots of Ne'ilah, because that's not the point. The point is the recognition. Hashem Maganu Gazal, it means essentially I screwed up. Avinu. You listen to the words you say. It just means I messed up. Things were good, I messed up. But my saying I messed up, that's the point of Yom Kippur. So there's two different levels we see Yom Kippur exists. There is an ultimate level of kapara, which really requires a Beis Hamikdash. Remember that overwhelmingly, if you this year you'll learn Chumash Rashi, right? You look at every single thing in the Mishkan, which ultimately is the Mikdash, is built in Mechaper on the Abel. It's all there for kapara. Everything is one thing connected to the other. So the entire Beis Hamikdash is focused on the kapara which needs to be achieved. We don't have that anymore. So whatever we can achieve in our own lives in terms of tshuva, which is a whole other shiur, that's the only things that are left to be able to achieve in terms of ultimately being able to correct things. Yom Kippur that we exist with, where there is no Beis Hamikdash aspect to it, there's just the idea of the slichul mechila, but it's not so just. It's the most necessary, simple, easy, available thing to us. That Yom Kippur comes along, and it's an amazing day when you realize those two things. He's available for slichul mechila. That every vidu we say, that I'm just explaining that I understand that I'm living a life of total insanity, and I'm so thankful that you understand that. But at least once a year, I'm willing to tell you that I understand that as well. Okay, now we can repair the relationship, and we can go further, like we can every year. So that I reconnect to it. I now have the ability to move forward, and those are the issues of Yom Kippur. Okay, that's the shiur. Questions? Yeah, show. It doesn't really, except that it really doesn't, except that on Yom Kippur it's the day of it. So you're right. You ask for slicha every single day because you need to ask for slicha every single day. But Yom Kippur is a day of actually having a recognition of the requirement for slicha, and it's actually the day the requirement for slicha. The most basic thing is the recognition of avalanaknu chatan, that being it. It doesn't have the same access, the same way everything doesn't have the same access when it's not a moed. It's achievable. When we say that Yom Kippur is a day that makes tshuva more achievable, it means it's actually a day which makes real tshuva more achievable too. Right? But you can do tshuva any day of the year. It's just not as accessible. This is a moed. It's a moed. It's a case. Yeah. Yes. It's deeper than that, but yes, 100%. You can't expect, in other words, you want to Baruch Hu to ignore the fact that you violated something, and to be, remember, slichul mechila means I'm really sorry I did it to you. I am really sorry. I can't make up what I did. Right? That's a very common thing. I can't make up what I did, but I'm truly sorry, and I would like to repair the relationship. That happens in human relationships all the time. I'm true. That's what it is. I can't undo it. Right? It depends on the situation. Every situation. I can't answer for it. It's not a general. Somebody had a question over here?
Me. I'm just curious if Yom Kippur has more significance after the Beis Hamikdash or before, or like now or before when there was a Mikdash.
I would say it has more significance during the time of the Beis Hamikdash, which is why we focus so much on the avodas Beis Hamikdash in our tefillah. The whole place is built for Yom Kippur.
Right. So we totally lack that.
Say again?
We totally lack all those dimensions.
Yeah. Because the ultimate kapara can only happen in the
Okay. Yeah.
Okay? Thank you all for coming. I'll see you. Everybody go back to night side. Stop the recording.